On the night of September 23, 2009, elderly millionaire Theodore Blackwood met his nephew David Blackwood on the old Riverside Bridge for what was supposed to be a private family discussion. The 79-year-old real estate mogul had something important to tell David about changes to his will, but their conversation would end in violence when David grabbed a heavy stone from the bridge's crumbling wall and struck his uncle repeatedly in the head. What David didn't realize was that 9-year-old Alex Martinez was fishing with his father beneath the bridge, hidden in the shadows and recording everything on his new digital camera. For 15 years, Alex kept this horrific secret buried in his memory and on a hidden memory card, too traumatized and frightened to tell anyone what he had witnessed. But in 2024, now 24 years old and haunted by guilt, Alex finally contacted police with evidence that would expose a brutal murder that had been covered up as an accidental fall. What he recorded that night would prove that Theodore Blackwood didn't slip from the bridge. He was beaten to death by the very person who stood to inherit his fortune. Our story unfolds in September 2009 in the small Connecticut town of Millbrook, population 8,500. The Riverside Bridge, built in 1892, spans the Connecticut River and connects the wealthy residential district where Theodore Blackwood lived to the downtown business area, where his real estate empire was headquartered. Theodore Blackwood, 79, was the town's wealthiest resident and most successful businessman. Over 5 decades, he had built Blackwood Properties into a multi-million-dollar company specializing in commercial and residential developments throughout New England. Despite his fortune, Theodore was known for his frugal lifestyle and demanding business practices. His nephew, David Blackwood, 43, had worked for the family company for 15 years, gradually assuming more responsibilities as Theodore aged. David managed day-to-day operations, while Theodore maintained control over major decisions in financial matters. To outsiders, David appeared to be the obvious heir to both the family business and Theodore's personal fortune. However, Theodore had become increasingly concerned about David's gambling addiction and poor financial judgment. David had accumulated substantial debts through online poker and casino visits, often using company credit cards for personal expenses. Theodore had covered these debts multiple times, but his patience was wearing thin. The Riverside Bridge held special significance for the Blackwood family. Theodore's father had helped finance its construction, and Theodore often walked across it during evening strolls to reflect on business decisions. The bridge was also a popular spot for local fishermen, including Miguel Martinez and his 9-year-old son Alex, who frequently fished in the calm waters beneath the bridge's stone arches. On September 23, 2009, Theodore called David to arrange a private meeting that evening. Theodore's housekeeper later told investigators that he seemed agitated and mentioned needing to discuss important family matters with his nephew. David agreed to meet at 8:30 p.m. on the Riverside Bridge, a location Theodore chose for its privacy and sentimental value. Alex Martinez had begged his father to take him fishing that evening, excited to try out the new digital camera his mother had bought him for his birthday. Miguel agreed, and they arrived at their usual fishing spot beneath the bridge around 7:45 p.m. Alex was fascinated by his camera's video function and had been recording fish jumping in the water when he heard voices from above. The conversation between Theodore and David began calmly, with both men standing near the bridge's center, silhouetted against the evening sky. Alex, hidden in the shadows beneath the bridge, initially ignored their voices, focusing on his fishing line and camera experiments. Theodore had requested this meeting to inform David that he was changing his will and removing him as primary beneficiary. Recent discoveries about David's gambling debts, unauthorized use of company funds, and a failed investment scheme had convinced Theodore that his nephew was not responsible enough to inherit the family business or fortune. David's reaction to this news was explosive. Witnesses later described hearing raised voices and what sounded like an argument, though specific words were difficult to distinguish. Alex looked up from his camera when the voices became louder and more aggressive, instinctively raising the device to record what was happening above. The video Alex captured shows the silhouettes of 2 men in heated discussion. Theodore's voice can be heard saying something about protecting the family legacy and making better choices. David's responses are angrier, with phrases like, "After everything I've done," and "You can't do this to me," clearly audible. The confrontation escalated when David grabbed Theodore by the shoulders, apparently trying to convince him to reconsider. Theodore pushed David away and turned to leave, stating that his decision was final. This rejection triggered David's violent response. Alex's recording captures the moment David picked up a large stone from the bridge's deteriorating wall. The stone was approximately the size of a football, heavy enough to cause serious damage. Without warning, David struck Theodore on the back of the head, causing the elderly man to stumble forward toward the bridge railing. Theodore fell to his knees, blood visible even in the dim lighting. David struck him again, this time on the side of the head, with enough force to knock Theodore unconscious. The third blow came as Theodore lay motionless on the bridge deck, ensuring that the elderly man would not survive the attack. Alex watched in horror as David then lifted Theodore's limp body and pushed it over the bridge railing into the river below. The splash was audible from Alex's position, and he saw his uncle's body disappear beneath the dark water. David stood at the railing for several minutes, apparently ensuring that Theodore would not resurface. The 9-year-old boy was traumatized by what he had witnessed. He stopped recording and hid the camera in his fishing tackle box, too frightened to tell his father what had happened above them. When Miguel asked about the noise, Alex claimed it was just a large fish jumping in the water. David's actions after the murder showed careful planning and deception. He waited approximately 30 minutes before calling 911 to report that his uncle had fallen from the bridge during their evening walk. When emergency responders arrived, David appeared distraught and provided a convincing account of Theodore losing his balance and falling over the railing. The initial investigation was brief and superficial. David's story was plausible, given Theodore's age and the bridge's poor lighting. The medical examiner noted head trauma consistent with impact against rocks in the riverbed. No one questioned whether the injuries could have been caused before Theodore entered the water. Theodore's funeral was attended by hundreds of community members and business associates. David delivered a moving eulogy about his uncle's generosity and business acumen, successfully portraying himself as a grieving nephew devastated by tragic accident. He inherited Theodore's entire estate, valued at approximately $15 million, and assumed control of Blackwood properties. Alex Martinez struggled with the psychological impact of witnessing the murder. He experienced nightmares, anxiety, and behavioral changes that concerned his parents. However, he never revealed the true source of his distress, claiming only that he was sad about the old man who had died in the river. Over the following years, David used his inherited wealth to pay off gambling debts and expand the family business. He maintained the facade of a successful businessman while continuing his destructive gambling habits. To outside observers, he appeared to be honoring his uncle's legacy while building on the foundation Theodore had established. Alex kept the digital camera hidden in his bedroom, occasionally reviewing the video when guilt and trauma overwhelmed him. As he grew older, he understood more clearly what he had witnessed and the moral implications of his silence. The weight of keeping such a significant secret affected his academic performance and social relationships throughout high school. During college, Alex studied criminal justice, partly motivated by his experience as a secret witness to murder. He learned about evidence preservation, witness testimony, and the importance of speaking up when crimes are committed. This education intensified his internal conflict about remaining silent. In 2024, at age 24, Alex finally reached a breaking point. Working as a paralegal in a law firm, he encountered a case involving witness testimony in a murder trial. The experience triggered memories of Theodore's death and forced Alex to confront his role in allowing David to escape justice for 15 years. Alex contacted the Connecticut State Police and requested a meeting with detectives investigating cold cases. When Detective Lisa Chen arrived at the scheduled meeting, Alex presented the digital camera containing the 2009 recording and provided a detailed account of what he had witnessed as a child. The video evidence was shocking and conclusive. Despite the passage of time, the recording clearly showed David striking Theodore with the stone and pushing his body into the river. Audio analysis confirmed the voices belonged to both men, and video enhancement techniques revealed details that proved the death was not accidental. Detective Chen immediately opened a murder investigation and obtained warrants to search David's current residence and business records. The investigation revealed that David had continued gambling excessively, accumulating new debts despite his inherited wealth. Financial records showed a pattern of poor business decisions and risky investments that had depleted much of Theodore's estate. Most damaging was the discovery of David's internet search history from September 2009, which included queries about inheritance laws, contesting wills, and accidental death versus murder investigations. These searches, conducted in the days before Theodore's death, suggested premeditation rather than a spontaneous act of violence. David Blackwood was arrested at his office on March 15, 2024, 15 years after murdering his uncle. The arrest shocked the Millbrook community, where David had been regarded as a successful businessman and charitable contributor. Many residents struggled to reconcile their image of David with the reality of his crime. The prosecution's case relied heavily on Alex's video evidence, supported by expert testimony about the nature of Theodore's injuries and the implausibility of David's original story. Forensic analysis of the bridge scene, though conducted years later, revealed blood residue that matched Theodore's DNA on stones near where the attack occurred. David's defense team argued that the video was inconclusive and that Alex's testimony was unreliable due to the trauma and time elapsed since the incident. They maintained that Theodore's death was indeed accidental and that any apparent violence in the recording could be explained by David's attempts to help his falling uncle. However, the evidence against David was overwhelming. The video clearly showed premeditated violence, and David's behavior after the murder demonstrated consciousness of guilt. His financial motives were obvious, and the pattern of deception following Theodore's death painted a picture of calculated murder rather than tragic accident. Alex's testimony during the trial was compelling and emotional. Now, a mature adult, he was able to articulate clearly what he had witnessed and explain why he had remained silent for so many years. His decision to finally come forward, despite personal cost and trauma, demonstrated remarkable courage and moral growth. In November 2024, David Blackwood was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. The conviction brought closure to a case that had haunted Alex Martinez for 15 years and ensured that Theodore Blackwood's killer would finally face justice. The case highlighted the importance of witness testimony, even when provided years after a crime. Alex's courage in coming forward, despite the personal difficulty and time elapsed, proved that justice can prevail when individuals choose to do what is right rather than what is easy. For the Millbrook community, David's conviction served as a sobering reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that evil can hide behind facades of respectability and success. Theodore Blackwood's legacy was ultimately preserved not through his nephew's inheritance, but through the pursuit of truth and justice. Alex Martinez continued working in the legal field, motivated by his experience to help other crime victims find justice. His decision to speak up after 15 years of silence demonstrated that it is never too late to do the right thing, and that the truth will eventually surface when brave individuals choose conscience over comfort. Today, the Riverside Bridge remains a landmark in Millbrook, but it now carries a different significance for those who know its true history. A small memorial plaque honors Theodore Blackwood's memory, placed there by community members who wanted to ensure that his life and tragic death would not be forgotten. The case serves as a powerful reminder that witnesses to crimes have both legal and moral obligations to come forward, even when doing so is difficult or frightening. Alex's eventual decision to speak the truth not only brought justice for Theodore, but also freed him from the psychological burden he had carried since childhood. David Blackwood's life sentence ensures that he will spend his remaining years paying for the brutal murder of his uncle, a crime motivated by greed and enabled by the assumption that no one would ever know the truth. His conviction proves that even carefully planned murders can be exposed when witnesses find the courage to speak and when investigators refuse to give up on seeking justice.